All rise. During the oral pleadings, both applicant and respondent are each allocated a total of 45 minutes to deliver their arguments. The 45 minutes shall cover the pleadings of the first and second oralist, and including the rebuttals and surrebuttals. The applicant begins first with their main pleadings, followed by respondent. Afterwards, applicant will once again deliver its rebuttal and followed by respondent's surrebuttal. The judges are allowed to ask questions during the entirety of the oral pleadings.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, may it please the Court.
The fourth issue is whether Rovina validly recognized the Transitional Council in Ambrosia when the Council waived the immunity of the Falcon, an aircraft owned by Ambrosian government. After a hurricane ravaged Ambrosia, President De Rey fell into a coma. Vice President Zavala became the president and the Falcon her official aircraft. She traveled the world while ignoring Ambrosia's dire situation. Protests erupted against Zavala, which later on gave birth to the Transitional Council. The council gained control over Ambrosia's government, while Zavala retained recognition from some states. When Zavala landed in Rovina, a Rovinian court issued a judgment impounding the Falcon. Zavala claimed the impounding is improper since the Falcon is immune from seizure, but the council waived the immunity. The two states will contend as which between the Transitional Council and Zavala is the authorized government of Ambrosia.
Each applicant and respondent must present their case before the International Court of Justice. 9 matches await in this round, each one a battle of wit, skill, and strategy in international law. Who will present the stronger case? Who will convince the court? The stage is set. Before the International Court of Justice, the applicant, De La Salle University Tanyada Jokno versus the respondent, Ateneo de Manila University. Now, applicant begins with its submissions.
I am Lance Nolasco, second agent of the applicant, the Union of Ambrosia. Rovina's seizure and sale of the Falcon is a violation of international law. If it pleases Your Excellencies, I will now proceed with my submissions.
Proceed.
The Rovina's seizure and sale of the Falcon is a violation of international law. Under customary international law as provided in the jurisdictional immunities case between Germany and Italy, state immunity from execution is absolute. However, it can be waived if a state expressly consents. And in this case, Your Excellency, Rovina claims that there was a valid waiver because the Transitional Council gave it. However, Your Excellencies, the Transitional Council cannot give the waiver, or its waiver cannot be given legal effect because it is not the government of Ambrosia under international law. As provided in the OCDP Charter in Article 1, that state parties have the duty to respect the rule of law and democratic institutions. And as provided in paragraph 24 of the Statement of Agreed Facts, only the Vice President can take over once the President is unable to perform his or her functions. And in this case,
Is it the root of democracy, popular representation, and Zavala no longer enjoys popular representation?
we take a different position on that matter, Your Excellency. The point of popular support, as provided in the Tinoco concessions case, is that in page 379 of that decision, is that Tinoco was supported by all people of Costa Rica. In this case, Your Excellency, as provided in paragraph 48 of the Statement of Agreed Facts, there were still protests that were happening.
Right. Tinoco involves dictatorship, correct? So this one, let's focus on this one when there's no allegation of dictatorship. Within Zavala, the considered as lacking popular representation?
Your Excellencies, if I may clarify, in the Tinoco concessions case, Your Excellency, Tinoco was not considered a dictator during that time. And even there was a popular support among the people of Costa Rica, and even cited that there was an applause by the people. Meaning, Your Excellencies, that Tinoco was supported by all the citizens of Costa Rica. However, in this case, Your Excellencies, as pointed out in paragraph 49, there were still protests that were happening, and that these protesters were even arrested and detained by the Transitional Council. Hence, Your Excellencies, the general support of the Ambrosian people cannot be submitted by the respondent in this case.
After we heard the applicant's arguments, now it's time to hear what the respondent has to say.
Madam President, Your Excellencies, good day and may it please the Court. My name is Julia Luisa Panganiban, appearing as second agent for the respondent, the Republic of Ravenia. Ravenia has lawfully seized and sold the Falcon based on the Transitional Council's waiver of immunity. At the outset, Your Excellencies, Article 19 of the UN Convention on Immunities provides that immune property, such as the Falcon in this case, may be seized if the state has expressly consented to its taking. However, Your Excellencies, respondent acknowledges that only the legitimate government may enter into these binding obligations such as this waiver. Thus, what is in dispute before us today is whether or not the Transitional Council was indeed the legitimate government of Ambrosia when it issued such. Your Excellencies, respondent is ready to argue two reasons as to why they are the legitimate government. First, in accordance with the customary principle of effective control, and second, Your Excellencies, that recognition is not an additional factor in establishing legitimacy.
Is your argument not legitimacy?
No, Your Excellencies, it is legitimacy. However, the standard that we must use is the customary standard of effective control.
So it is the state, it is the government with effective control that is always the legitimate government.
Yes, Your Excellencies, it is our position. Your Excellencies, we do see that there's a presumption as to constitutional and democratic governments. However, this presumption is lost when another authority effectively controls the state, which is the Transitional Council in this case. But before applying it to the Transitional Council, Your Excellencies, let me establish how this is still the customary.
I'm sorry, so what makes a government legitimate is effective control?
Your Excellencies, yes, effective control, but the reason as to how this authority can effectively rule over the state, and thus other states, Your Excellencies, would want to enter into relations with that government.
Because we have to be clarified whether it is legitimacy or effective control, or are you saying they're the same?
Your Excellencies, we use effective control, to clarify, we use effective control to determine a government's legitimacy.
The respondent wins the match. Next, the applicant, Aurora State College versus the respondent, Arellano University.
I am Aaron Casalio, second agent for the applicant. Proceeding with our fourth and last submission, Ravenia's seizure and sale of Ambrosia's aircraft pursuant to the Formulous Court's decision on July 14, 2023, on the basis of the Council's purported waiver of immunity violated international law.
Council, I have a question. How will you reconcile your position with the International Convention on Immunities, particular Article 10, that if the state engages in a commercial transaction with a foreign natural and juridical person, then the state cannot invoke immunity from that jurisdiction?
Your Excellency, with that question is acknowledged. However, we submit the doctrines for state recognition and government, especially the Strada Doctrine, that explicitly presents that while a de facto government may control internal administrative functions, the absence of formal recognition limits its abilities to engage in international relations.
Agent, could you please explain the La Doctrina Ortiz Rubio further?
Kindly repeat the question, Madam.
Could you please explain the La Doctrina Ortiz Rubio doctrine further?
Okay. Apology, Madam. The speaker is not fully apprised regarding the doctrine. However,
It's another name of the Estrada doctrine.
Oh, so apologies.
Could you explain it further? Its origin, how did it come about, the changes in Mexico, and then probably the return to it?
Again, madam, apologies, the speaker is not fully apprised regarding the doctrine. However, we use doctrine, the main spirit of doctrine, which posits that de facto government may not fully enter international relations due to lack of recognition.
That's not quite the doctrine, though. I suggest that you might further review that, what exactly it is, before you claim it as an authority to support your argument.
Thank you, madam.
Secondly, you have to, could you explain next time, should there be a next time, the flip-flopping in Mexico as well? Because that will in turn probably assist another point, but you can use it also to strengthen your argument.
Thank you, madam.
That's it for now.
Thank you, madam, for the contention and for the guidance. May I proceed, ma'am?
Counsel, I just have another question.
Yes, Your
Do you
Excellency.
confirm that Ambrosia participated in the case, in the Romanian case, leading to the seizure of the Falcon, correct? And because of it participated in that case, it cannot therefore invoke its immunity, the principle of immunity. I'm actually referring to Article 8 of the United Nations Convention. Now, why are you saying that? Why are we saying that the Falcon should enjoy immunity when your state, the state of Ambrosia, cannot invoke this immunity from the jurisdiction of the Romanian court?
The question is acknowledged, Your Excellency. However, we remain committed with our contention that the Transitional Council lacked international legal personality and could not waive immunity of the Falcon.
After we heard the applicant's arguments, now it's time to hear what the respondent has to say.
Madam President, Your Excellencies, good day. I am Mia Ara Camacho, appearing as second agent for the respondent. On our fourth submission, Rovinia lawfully acquired jurisdiction over the Falcon through the Transitional Council's waiver of immunity. We acknowledge that state immunity property is a fundamental principle of international law, but it may be waived under certain circumstances. On the first circumstance, if the act of the state is an acta juris or commercial in nature, and the second circumstance, under Article 7, Paragraph 1 of the UN Jurisdictional Immunities on State and its Property, when the state has explicitly waived its immunity on the property. On the waiver of immunity, there is valid waiver if the state that has waived it has effective control over the territory or the state.
How will you reconcile that position with the subsequent declaration of the RA government that the assumption of power by the Transitional Council is unconstitutional?
Your Excellency, the Transitional Council is an interim government which took into power for a certain time as needed by the situation. In the decisions of the ICJ in previous cases, it has acknowledged that there is a need for an interim government when the authority that is seated in the state is the cause of the harm on the people, and provided that it has exemplified or satisfied the condition on effective control. Then
why should we recognize the actions of this Transitional Council if their assumption or even establishment is by itself unconstitutional?
we submit to this court that it should acknowledge the legitimacy of the authority of the Transitional Council, because although it took power through unconstitutional means, the international community has acknowledged, and the ICJ decisions recognize that the constitutional means is not the only way for a government to be a legitimate authority. It is also allowed through a transitional government or interim government.
There were reports that there are several other states which recognize the Zabala government. And not the government of the transitional council.
Yes, Your Excellency.
There was no recognition or recognition of the transitional council.
Yes, Your Excellency. In the Tinoco case, it was emphasized by this honorable court that although recognition would support the validity of effective control, what matters is the presence of effective control of the authority seated.
Even if that is unconstitutional, even if the transitional council is unconstitutional.
Yes, Your Excellency. The ICJ here reasoned that for the purpose of furtherance of the general welfare of the people, they will acknowledge the effective control of an authority.
The respondent wins the match. Up next, the applicant, University of Makati, facing the respondent, Beda College of Law.
Good day, Mr. President, Your Excellencies. I am Jasper Franz T. Mapa, the second agent from the Union of Ambrosia. For our fourth submission, the Union of Ambrosia submits that the Rovinia's seizure of the Falcon is in violation of international law based on the Palmora Court's decision based on the Transitional Council's waiver. And in this case, the Falcon is used by acting president, and now the former vice president, which she uses it for its diplomatic missions. And in this case, we can see that the Falcon is used for its official purpose, and it has a jurisdictional immunity.
Agent, but didn't Ambrosia waive their immunity?
Your Excellency, although the Transitional Council has waived its immunity, we believe that it is not a valid waiver.
Why?
It is not a valid waiver given that Transitional Council does not enjoy constitutional recognition, and secondly, that there is no effective control from the Transitional Council.
How did they not have recognition when there were a definitive number of states that recognized the authority of the Transitional Council, as well as people from within Ambrosia also supported the acts of the Transitional Council?
Your Excellency, under the Articles of Responsibility of States for International Wrongful Acts, it is provided that the coup or the Transitional Council, for example, in this case, has the burden to prove that the Zaldava's government should not be recognized. So now the burden is shifted on the Transitional Council to prove to other states that they are the recognized the representative of the Union of Ambrosia. And
but they are essentially recognized already. So in essence, Rovinia recognized the authority of the Transitional Council.
However, yes, Your Excellency. However, in this case, that the Transitional Council also has been pardoned by President Dere. So it shows that the Transitional Council has a knowledge that their acts, for example, is not representative of Union of Ambrosia. And given that this is not a representative act of Union of Ambrosia, they accepted or rejected the pardon given by President Dere.
After we heard the applicant's arguments, now it's time to hear what the respondent has to say.
My name is Natalie Porras, second agent of the respondent, the Republic of Rovinia. Rovinia's judicial seizure and sale of the Falcon is on the basis of the Transitional Council's waiver of immunity is in accordance with international law. First, we established the validity of the Transitional Council as a valid de facto government. Under the Tinoco arbitration's case, the case of Upright versus Mercury Business Corporation, and the Korean War that occurred, and historically the Korean War that occurred in the United States, a valid de facto government has three requisites. First, that there is effective control over the state and its territory. Second is that there is non-confrontation with active resistance. And lastly, that it performs its government duty, its government authorities. Under the RCWA, it is stated that a that an internationally wrongful act is a breach of obligation that is attributable to the state. Under Article 36 of the same, injured states are entitled to compensation. So, by waiving the immunity of the Falcon and seizing such to Ravinia, if the Transitional Council only fulfills the obligation or its duty to compensate the injured state as stated in the Omander Corporation versus the State of Ambrosia case.
The respondent wins the match. The elimination round will continue when the JESSUP 2025 Philippine Round Journey returns. The competition continues. Next before the court, the applicant, University of San Agustin, against the respondent, University of Cebu, Manila. Applicant begins with its submissions.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, may it please the Court. I am Marco Giorgioni Dava, second agent of the applicant state, the Union of Ambrosia. Here, Your Excellencies, while there is no international convention detailing the requisites for governmental recognition, customary legal frameworks exist which highlight the constitutionality and the democratic character of an entity before deeming it as the government of that state. Author Pablo Paulos and Talmon note that an international illegality can also be found when a state or an entity's government, has a violation of human rights within it.
But at the very least, I would agree with you that the definition means that they are not a de jure government, right? But as a de facto government, you need to agree, you will agree with me that the long list of cases, both domestic and international, would make the Transitional Council fall under this broad definition of a de facto government. So at the very least, aren't they a de facto government?
In that case, Mr. President, the applicant may indeed agree that it is a de facto government with effective control. However, to this we look into the United Nations General Assembly's report on the credentials of representatives, as well as the Security Council's Resolution 63/301, which provides that in times of contested governmental transitions between a constitutional government and an unconstitutional claimant with effective control, the former prevails, and that is the constitutional government.
At least with respect to who the General Assembly and the Security Council will recognize in respect of who will vote for GA resolutions and Security Council resolutions, but not when it comes to who is the effective power of that country that is ruling that country, right?
Yes, Mr. President. In that regard, the applicant submits that we may seek refuge in the status quo approach, as argued in ConocoPhillips versus Venezuela, which states that the government representing a state in a prior proceeding shall be the same government representing that state in latter stages of that proceeding. Notably, in this case, Your Excellencies, the seizure and sale of the Falcon never would have come to fruition had it not been for the filing of the Omander case. And in that case, Your Excellencies, it was Ambrosia's constitutional government, which is Zavala's constitutional government, which represented Ambrosia and not the Transitional Council.
After we heard the applicant's arguments, now it's time to hear what the respondent has to say.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, good day and may it please the Court. I am Ayana Mabelin and I am the second agent for the respondent, the Republic of Ravinia. The respondent had two arguments, and that is that we have a legal obligation to uphold the democratic system in the OCDP Charter, and that the seizure and sale of the Ambrosian government asset, or the Falcon, was filed by Zavala, and therefore she should remain as the one in the proceeding.
How was the Transitional Council formed?
Your Excellencies, paragraph 38 of the facts will show you that Ms. Peretes headed the formation of the Transitional Council. She called for an assembly, Your Excellencies, and with this, a Transitional Council was formed with 3 military officers, 10 parliamentarians, and 5 of the former ministers.
So essentially, it is to put it up, right?
It can be viewed as that way, Your Excellency. It is correct that acting President Zavala
was not stripped of her function or her title as the acting president, but in this case, she no longer exercised effective control over Ambrosia, nor did she exercise her governmental functions, Your Excellencies, because she was residing already in Caron and not in Ambrosia. And within Ambrosia, during their 9 months as a body in Ambrosia, Your Excellencies, they have passed bills such as the reconstruction bills, and they have also issued the waiver against the Falcon, which is a sovereign asset.
The applicant wins the match. Up next, the applicant, University of St. LaSalle versus the respondent, Ateneo de Zamboanga University.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, may it please the Court. My name is Kevin Lindio. It is an honor to appear before the International Court of Justice, pleading on behalf of the applicant, the Union of Ambrosia. I would like to invite this Court to our fourth issue. Your Excellencies, the actions taken by Arellano to seize and sell the Falcon manifest a clear violation of international legal principles, of state immunity, the recognition of governments, and the limits of enforcement measures established by UNCJISP, which is binding between Ambrosia and Arellano. Your Excellencies, I...
Who may speak on behalf of a state when it comes to waiving immunity?
Well, Your Excellencies, it should be coming from a legitimate government authority, where in that case, two parties had declared to claim such authority. On the other hand, on one hand, there's the Transitional Council, and on the other hand, the constitutionally established leader, which is the acting president, Ms. Salle. So in that case, Your Excellencies, Ambrosia, being a constitutionally established nation, must abide by its own constitution in determining whether which one truly is the true government or should have claimed the true governmental authority.
So you're saying that Rovinia's recognition of the council shouldn't be binding?
It shouldn't be binding, Your Excellencies, as far as the Constitution of Ambrosia is concerned, because first of all, the Transitional Council does not have a legitimate authority to commit such a waiver, more so, even act upon any foreign relation or any foreign type of transaction, especially with another state, such as the Rovina.
Is there any rule under international law that establishes the elements, for example, for you to assess that the Transitional Council should not be recognized by Ambrosia?
I can only reflect on the Transitional Councils that had happened over the course of history, where this taking over of such a government had been maliciously being done by those leaders, as the case that I've already mentioned earlier, the Pinochet case, wherein this respondent or this defendant was accused of doing so many crimes and terrors, causing terrors to the citizens of the country. And basing on that, Your Excellencies, this taking over such a government had been disregarded and had not been encouraged by so many states, and I think that's international. What I would present as internationally acknowledged belief.
After we heard the applicant's arguments, now it's time to hear what the respondent has to say.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, good morning. My name is Ryan Kaiser Sakir, appearing before you as the second agent for the Republic of Rovina, the respondent in this case.
Agent, as mentioned by the applicant, it goes against your constitution that the Transitional Council exists.
Your Excellency, it is our firm position rather, that there is no need to conform to constitutional process as held in the case of Tinoco arbitration, because to rule otherwise or to argue otherwise would mean that any other methods of creating a new government that is contrary to one's constitutional process would not create a new government, as affirmed by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in the case of Tinoco, Your Excellency.
You stated that your basis is the presumptive freedom of the people to choose their leaders. But would you agree with me that this freedom to choose the leaders of the country must always be exercised within the bounds of law and the Constitution? Would you agree with me?
I will have to disagree with you, Your Excellency, not necessarily, as Again, as held in the case of Tinoco arbitration, Your Excellency, there is really no need to conform to previous constitutional frameworks for a new government to emerge. Also, Your Excellency, another basis for the legitimacy of the Transitional Council is the effective control. And in this case, the Transitional Council has effectively controlled all parts of the Ambrosia, including its key state organs and the military.
The respondent wins the match. Next before the judges, it's the applicant, Mindanao State University, versus the respondent, Beda College, Alabang School of Law.
Your Excellencies, Mr. President, may it please the Court. My name is JESSUP, representing the applicant, the Union of Ambrosia. Your Excellency, we submit that while this rule of sovereign immunity allows for an exception in case of consent, we submit that a state's legitimate authority is required to validly waive immunity. And in this case, Your Excellency, we submit that Rovinia's seizure and sale of the Falcon violates international law because the Transitional Council, to which the Permola Court based its July 14, 2023 decision, gave its waiver, or the waiver it gave is void, Your Excellency.
Isn't that more of a political question as opposed to an international law question which this court can take cognizance of?
Your Excellency, we submit that there is indeed a political color in this issue, Your Excellency. However, we submit that in recognizing a government, in recognizing a valid government, the recognizing state should act within the bounds of international law principles. In this case, Your Excellency, we submit that Rovinia's basis of the recognition of the Transitional Council runs afoul to international law principle, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, the facts would tell us that Rovinia based its recognition of the Transitional Council on the effective control criterion. And we submit, Your Excellency, that the Transitional Council has not achieved an effective control. Your Excellency, it is our submission.
Okay, what are the requisites of effective control?
Your Excellency, we submit that effective control, or a governmental claimant to be able to have effective control must satisfy two requirements. First, Your Excellency, the government must have a reasonable prospect of permanence, and second, it must have stability.
What's the basis for those conditions?
Your Excellency, this is illustrated in the case of United Kingdom versus Costa Rica, where the arbitrator declared the Tinoco government to be a valid government despite its lack of constitutional basis. The Tinoco government, Your Excellency, was recognized as an actual sovereign government because there was no factual evidence to suggest that during its regime, it was not in actual and peaceful administration without resistance.
But the Tinoco government had no opposition, right? Not like in this case where there are two factions claiming that they are the government.
Exactly, Your Excellency. That is this case, Your Excellency, can be. We humbly submit that this case can be used for the court to arrive at a decision, Your Excellency, because the respondents might argue on the basis of Tinoco government on the basis that the Tinoco government invoking effective control. And as you have said, Your Excellency, the Tinoco government, in this case, there is no governmental dispute, there is no contested government, therefore there is stability and reasonable prospect of permanence.
After we heard the applicant's arguments, now it's time to hear what the respondent has to say.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, good evening. My name is Ivan Paul Aborot, the second agent for the Republic of Rovenia. We respectfully submit the Transitional Council validly waived the immunity over the Falcon.
Notwithstanding the waiver, is the Falcon diplomatic property or not?
We would submit that it is diplomatic.
It is. So regardless of which government is the proper government, it is diplomatic
Yes, Your
property.
Excellency. And it can be waived pursuant to Article 19, provided it is done with authority and expressly.
Okay, can diplomatic property be attached in a civil case?
We would submit that still yes, Your Excellency, because Article 19 does not distinguish as to the
Article 19 of
the UNCJISP, Your Excellency. It is only asserted there that it can be waived regardless of the form of state property, provided it is done expressly and with authority. And we would submit that it is with authority because the Transitional Council exercises effective control as the recognized government.
Just a practical question, okay? Instead of just diving into who's the real government, etc., why not just pay the equivalent amount of the plane or replace the plane and have another property attached so that we don't waste our time here?
Your Excellency, because it is the property in question before the Permola courts, such property...
It was attached, right?
Yes.
But it's not the only property that could be attached. Other properties could also be attached, right? So why not just attach another property so that we can all save?
We would look into the statement of President Piretti because President Piretti expressly asserted that the government does not need any form of luxury for the use of in order to go to other states, and they wanted to attach that property in order to show that they are one with the victims of the Davao disaster.
That's a government asset, as you admitted earlier. Are you considering it a luxury?
Your Excellency, we would submit that this is not necessarily mutually exclusive because while it is indeed a government asset, however, President Piretti described it as a luxury, and we would submit that the fact that it is a luxury does not necessarily remove the character of it being a sovereign asset.
The respondent wins the match. The final set of matches is coming up when the JESSUP 2025 Philippine Round Journey returns. The competition continues. Up next, the applicant, Bukidnon State University, taking on the respondent, University of Makati. The respondent has arrived, but the applicant has yet to appear.
Around 4 o'clock, the bailiff announced that the other team was not yet there. So for every team, there is a body. We tried contacting the body, and we could not reach both the team members, the coach, and the body as well. So little did we know that they missed their schedule for round 5.
They received the schedule and they inadvertently forgot that they have a match this afternoon. So they left and they're now trying to rush back here. So we told them that the rules are very specific. And so therefore, if they're not here on the 30th minute, it's ex parte. We lay it to the body to make the decision, but those are the rules. In the end, it will be the call of the judges.
Now, the rules provide specifically 6.7 the guidelines for ex parte proceedings. So ex parte meaning to be heard by or hearing one side. For in terms of late, there is a rule that in case a team is absent for at least 30 minutes, the administrator may allow the other team to be heard ex parte. So the judges will score the team ex parte, only their side, as if the other team is also present.
After careful deliberation and consultation with the rules, we have decided that we will wait until 6 o'clock for the other party to appear. Okay, and however, if they're not here by 6 o'clock, we will proceed with the proceedings ex parte. We would like to give both parties the benefit of a full moot experience, which is why we decided to extend that consideration.
They just proceeded with the round because they know that they're taking everybody's time, and everyone was happy naman that they were able to reach. In fact, one of the decision why the judges allowed them a last 30-minute extension is because the judges wanted to have everyone to have a full moot experience.
Madam Chair, Your Excellencies, good evening. The sale of an Ambrosian aircraft violated international law. To recall, Your Excellencies, the Falcon was a military aircraft repurposed in 2019
to be the official plane of Vice President Zavala with approval of President Derry, yes, Your Excellencies. However, on March 2023, pursuant to the Formula Court of First Instance ruling, the Falcon has been seized to satisfy the case filed and won by Mander Corp in 2017, pursuant to the Transitional Council's purported waiver of immunity.
Did the constitutional government ever question any of the acts that were done by the Transitional Council?
Your Excellencies, as far as I can recall, they had contended, especially the fourth submission, which is the sale of an Ambrosian aircraft, the Falcon, which violated the immunity of governmental property for the unconstitutional ostensible government based on the current customary international law practices, will not gain any legitimacy or power to have this,
so based on
such
the
actions,
record,
Your Excellency.
this is the only matter in which they question the acts of the Transitional Council.
More so, Your Excellency, since the fourth submissions is the most important, there are some also oppositions coming from the governmental. Of course, first is they oppose that this Transitional Council first has the legitimacy or authority to act as the government in behalf of Ambrosia, Your Excellency, for based on the Constitution of Ambrosia, of acting Vice President Mary Zavala or President Zavala at that time is the constitutional claimant to the government, Your Excellencies. Therefore, Your Excellencies, any actions, and which includes the purported waiver immunity of the Transitional Council, were null and void from the very beginning, Your Excellencies.
Are all the actions and all the everything that is governmental that has been undertaken by a de facto government, what is the legal status of that once the Euro government comes back to power, or at least is recognized?
Your Excellencies, even though it has effective control, as we concede, it does not matter.
So you concede that they had effective control over this?
Over a portion of time, Your Excellencies, yes, Your Excellencies. For the Transitional Council only did exercise effective control for the duration of President Derry. However, that effective control was not totally effective at all, for it lacks permanence.
After we heard the applicant's arguments, now it's time to hear what the respondent has to say.
Honorable judges, Your Excellencies, good afternoon. May it please this court, I am Rex Jasper Dumagpi, appearing as the second agent for the Council and of the Republic of Rovenia. Our fourth submission provides that Rovenia's judicial seizure and sale of the Falcon is valid. Validity is not only by constitutional legitimacy, but by effective control as well, as ruled in the Tinoco arbitration, Your Excellency, wherein the case provides that it is between UK, Britain versus Costa Rica as to the imposition of a civil obligation on the rights of, on the side of Costa Rica, wherein...
What do you mean by effective control?
Your Excellency, as I've cited in this case as well, effective control is defined as having two main requisites on an authority that wants to exercise authority over a certain state. First, there must control over territory. Second, there must control over the institution within that territory. When we're talking about control, Your Excellency, we're talking about substantial control.
What do you mean by transitional council in this particular case?
For this case, Your Excellency, the transitional council is defined as the authority that was vested the governance when it comes to the ongoing political instability of the case of Rovenia, wherein after this temporary existence, when the case in the case that the president is back on its feet and to take operations on the government of Ambrosia, it is thereby recognized validly, as similar to the case of the Libyan Transitional Council as well, Your Excellency.
The applicant wins the match. Next, the applicant, San Sebastian College Recoletos versus the respondent, Far Eastern University.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, good day. My name is Makiri Sajili II, second agent of the applicant, the Union of Ambrosia.
the Falcon is a sovereign asset, meaning it is protected from seizure. It is immune from seizure of other states. And second, the waiver granted by Transitional Council is invalid.
In this case, Rovinia recognized the Transitional Council as the legitimate government of Ambrosia at the time. So how would that now go with your argument?
Your Excellency, the acknowledgement of Rovinia of the waiver, the acknowledgement of the waiver granted by the Transitional Council is invalid, and because we have to check we have to test it under the test of recognition, wherein a government must exhibit effective and stable control over its territory to be recognized. However, they took control over the country when it was vulnerable, meaning that Zavala was outside Ambrosia performing her.
Outside of our current case, states have recognized other states which are led by breakaway groups, say the Philippines during the People Power Revolution, or even in Afghanistan at some point. So, don't you think your argument is actually wrong?
Your Excellency, that is a compelling point. However, as this court affirmed in the arrest warrant case, changes in government do not automatically affect a state's right under international law.
After we heard the applicant's arguments, now it's time to hear what the respondent has to say.
Your Excellencies, Mr. President, good afternoon. My name is Denise Magtabog. I am the second agent for the Republic Respondent of Rovinia. Your Excellencies, the applicant submits that the Transitional Council had no authority to act on behalf of Ambrosia, and we disagree. Under the principle of continuity of states, a government is bound by the actions of its prior government, regardless of any political changes. Under the Tinoco arbitration case,
I believe that President Derry later on withdrew the waiver. And I believe prior to that, the waiver wasn't qualified as something that was irrevocable. So why can't Rovinia now honor the withdrawal of the waiver?
Excellency, to answer your question, yes, President Derry did revoke the waiver. However, the waiver of the Falcon was in connection with an arbitral ruling in favor of the Omander Corporation, a Rovinian corporation. And this ruling stated that the government of Ambrosia owed the Omander Corporation and must fulfill these obligations. Despite the many attempts of the Ambrosian court, the Permola court, to be able to resolve this matter, Ambrosia consistently tried to evade their responsibilities. And thus, when the Falcon was impounded, it was later sold in order to pay these obligations.
The respondent wins the match. And finally, before the International Court of Justice, the applicant, Ateneo de Davao University, against the respondent, Jose Rizal Memorial State University.
I'm South Korea, and I am the second agent claiming on behalf of the applicant, the Union of Ambrosia. This case is rooted in the fundamental principles of state sovereignty and jurisdictional immunity, enshrined in customary international law and United Nations Convention on Jurisdictional Immunities of States and Their Property. We submit as our first point that the seizure and subsequent sale of the Falcon, a military aircraft repurposed for official state functions, constitute clear violations of this principle.
The argument that it belongs to the state, if I recall correctly, it was waived. The right to get the aircraft back was waived by the transition government.
Yes, Your Excellency. It was waived by the Transitional Council by that time, which comes to our second point, Your Excellency, which is that the purported waiver of immunity by the Transitional Council is legally invalid for two reasons. First, the Transitional Council had no constitutional authority. It was an unconstitutional entity established through unconstitutional means during a period of political instability. Under paragraph 24 of the Compromise, Your Excellency, our Constitution provided that when a president is temporarily unable to perform his duties, the powers of the office devolve upon the vice president. Therefore, Your Excellency, since the vice president is a sitting constitutional authority, therefore it is only her waiver that can be valid, Your Excellency.
After we heard the applicant's arguments, now it's time to hear what the respondent has to say.
My name is Rica May Soranda, the second agent for the Republic of Ravinia, the respondent of this case. The doctrine of necessity recognizes that in extreme circumstances, states may adopt measures essential for their survival. According to the International Law Commission on its articles on state responsibility, this doctrine may be invoked when, if an act of a state is the only way for the state to safeguard an essential interest against a grave and imminent peril, and two, it does not seriously impair an essential interest of that state towards which the obligations exist or of the international community as a whole.
Agent, would you agree that the Vice President was actually still in office at the point in time where the transitional government took effect?
Constitutionally, Your Excellency, Ms. Zavala is the acting president of Ambrosia, Your Excellency.
So you do agree that she was still in the country at the time?
She was not in the country at that time, Your Excellency. She was in Doha during a convention, and during that time, the population of Ambrosia was already calling for her attention to sign a reconstruction bill for their support to reconstruct their government after they have suffered from the Hurricane Luna, Your Excellency.
But did they ever ask her to step down?
In a way, they have, based on the compromise, Your Excellency, seven ministers or part of the 15 members of the cabinet have resigned, stating that they want another leader for the country in order for them to serve the people, Your Excellency. And also it was subsequently followed by protests which started in Dovelina, which was devastated by Hurricane Luna, and it was then followed by protests within 12 states of Ambrosia, which has emerged into chaos since tens of thousands of people have gone to the streets saying that they want a new president to lead their country.
The respondent wins the match.
Moot court is a form of argumentation, like debating, but more formal. Moot court requires submissions of pleadings. Unlike ordinary debating, it's purely oral argumentation. Yung moot court, kailangan mag-submit ka ng mga papel. So yun ang kaibahan. Plus, debating, usually, you debate among yourselves. Both sides debating against each other. In mooting, the debater is being asked questions by the judges. So it's totally different than ordinary debating. It's more akin to actual court litigation, meaning you're simulating, pretending to be in court. And the judges are asking questions to the lawyers who are the debaters. These are students who devote their time to mooting for the same reason. It's not just the cheering of the crowd, not just the victory. They do these things because they have a goal, and they know that it will give honor to the university and to their families.
In the next episodes, 4 teams, rise above the rest, and the semifinals rounds begin. This is JESSUP 2025, the Philippine Rounds Journey.